able to seal him. Here's the pass. Oh, what a catch! Leaping into the air and pulling it down is T. Higgins. Burrow facing pressure. Goes over the top. Wide open is Chase. And he splits the defenders for the touchdown. Cincinnati kid, Hubbard's got a convoy, chased by Andrews, at
the 30, the 20, he will score.
Hooday, Bengal fans. Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. He is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Mon, you got me. You got me all thrown off after you said that about Jonathan India. I went and checked what happened. Don't do that to me. Do not do that to me. I'm trying to stay positive about this Reds team. They told me the pitching was going to be better, Mon. It still sucks. I am. This is not a Reds podcast. This is not a Reds podcast. That's all I'm going to say. It's not a Reds.
How
podcast.
do you not slide?
How
do you not slide?
I don't know what to say.
You just can't. Bengals. Let's talk Bengals.
Let's talk Bengals. Hooday, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. AC said everyone is watching LSU versus Iowa right now. I don't know. I guess that is a big game. But let's talk Bengals. We have a lot to talk about, and really the basis of this show too is Mon and I are going to go back and we're going to fix what the Bengals broke back in 2021, that horrendous draft. As we go through this, guys, in the comments section, let us know if there's anyone you would take. We're going to talk about the Bengals pick and then talk about maybe who was sitting there that the Bengals passed up and why did the Bengals fail so badly at this draft and the ramifications, hopefully, that we don't see from this draft as well. But thank you guys all for tuning in. For me, I am excited about Reds baseball. I'll say just very quickly, this team could be exciting. It really could be. They start 2-1, obviously playing right now. But first three games, Mon, just real quick, give me your take on the Reds so far this season. Got a long way to go.
Yeah, baseball is a grind. 162 games in like 190 plus days. It's amazing how many games they play in that time period. It's a grind. It's only 3 games. A little frustrating, exciting. I stopped watching when there was 2 outs, and I thought the game was over. I flipped over to that UFL game, whatever, the St. Louis Battlehawks. And I started watching NCAA basketball, and then my phone started going crazy. Reds win, and I'm like, "Hey, man, this is an AT&T glitch. Something's not right." And then I go back, and I see everybody celebrating, and I'm like, "Figures, classic Mon. I don't get to watch one of the most exciting things happen to the Reds." And then tonight, they start off with a triple, and short pop fly into center field. Don't send him. It was so, and then they did send him, and he just trots in, slide. It's 1-0. Oh man, I love sports so much, but it's so frustrating.
Let me tell you, Mon. This was me and you on the phone yesterday during that Reds, those last 3 innings for the Reds game yesterday. I am just ripping them on our text message. I'm just ripping them. I can't believe I'm watching this team again. They're gonna do this to me again this year. And then I text you after the 9th inning. I'll see you again tomorrow, Reds. Yeah, go Reds. Yeah. It's like that Browns factory of sadness. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Clevelander. I'll see you Sunday. But no, this Reds team could be exciting. Again, you blow the second game. You give up 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th, which, by the way, our relief pitchers are still terrible. I don't know what the thought process is right now for the Reds going into the season with Buck Farmer and those guys. They are absolutely awful. But then yesterday, of course, with 2 outs, India has a 10-pitch at bat, doubles, Benson, 2-run homer, the game's tied, and then Cess walks it off. Thank God he walked it off, because if he went 0 for 13, his first 13 at bats, there would be a lot of trouble in Redstown. But anyway, let's get to the Bengals.
Yeah,
Go
I just
Reds.
want to say one other thing. Like I get fired up. I was frustrated with you yesterday. I think we're overreacting a little bit. We got 159 more games to go.
I
think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be fine.
I don't ever overreact, Mom. When have you ever known me to overreact?
We should have a 24-hour marathon Bengals Pulse and go over every one. I got notes and receipts.
We should do.
Go ahead.
We need to do a live stream of Jake watching a Bengals game, and then we'll just show all the overreactions on every play.
The meltdown. You should see me watching the Reds. It's just as bad. I mean, there's 159 games left to go, and I'm just going off on my phone.
Jake, for Christmas, I'm getting you a shirt for Christmas that says "pathetic" across it. I'm gonna send it to you.
I do text that word a lot. Funny. Yes, Matt. It is April Fool's Day. I'm sure we're going to be getting a lot of those.
Matt. Come on,
Matt. That's not funny, Matt.
Wouldn't that be something if it was true? I'm like, Matt breaks the news.
What if that was true? Matt would be all over Twitter that he broke the news of maybe the biggest trade in Bengals history. All right, let's get to some Bengals news real quick. Houday, Chris, thanks for joining us. Real quick, guys, there was a little bit of Bengals news. The dates have been released for the offseason workouts. The first day is going to be April 15th. The OTA offseason workouts are May 28th through the 30th, and then June 3rd through the 6th. And then mandatory minicamp is June 11th through the 13th. And guys, what is significant about these dates? Well, very simply, Joe Burrow is going to be there, and he's going to be throwing the ball. Because as we heard this week, Mr. Joe Cool is throwing the football. Guys, this is a huge deal right now, how quickly Joe has gotten through this wrist injury. And again, with OTAs just around the corner, there is no doubt that Joe Burrow is going to be there throwing. What are your thoughts on this, guys?
Go ahead, Eric.
I mean, it's frustrating that every offseason it feels like we're talking about something like this. I just want him to ease into it. You know, they said last year that he came into training camp and he was in the best shape of his life at the start of training camp. And we don't necessarily want that. We want him exiting training camp in the best physical condition possible. You know, the slow burn, the slow ramp up. So don't go too hard, too fast, Joe. That's all I ask.
I agree, Eric. I agree. It was a pretty serious wrist injury. A lot of prominent doctors on local Cincinnati radio were talking 4, 6, maybe 6 to 8 months. Hope he eases his way into it. He's got a few more months to go before he really gets serious. No reason to do anything stupid, but seeing the video of him lifting weights, it looks like he's in excellent shape. He takes care of his body. Joe Burrow is built different. He's going to do this professionally the right way, and he'll be ready. And let's just make this team let's just improve this roster and help him, and let's get back to the playoffs.
I can't possibly see the Bengals pushing him into anything that he doesn't feel comfortable with. It pretty much seems like Joe is going to be the one that handles when he is throwing at a higher pace than what he is throwing now. But just the fact that he is throwing now, because we've obviously seen over these last 2 months everybody panicking about, oh, did you see that? He still got the brace on. Did you see that? Twitter has been nonstop and everybody's panicking. And now we find out he's working out and throwing the football. So again, you can't always believe what you see, right? This is a guy who is dialed in all the time, who loves ball, who is not going to be one of those guys that misses football. We saw that last year, although maybe he should have set out week 1 and week 2. But this is not a guy that likes to miss any ball. But it is exciting to think about the fact that Joe is going to be back throwing. I want to say real quick, Houday, Vanguard, Houday, Ross, and And what's up, Jason? Thank you guys again for joining us. Real quick, guys, some more Bengal news. This kind of threw me off guard when I read this today, but they came out with the top 25 performance-based pay distributions for this past season, and number 4 on the list, Cordell Volson was number 4 on the list, making almost $906,000 in performance-based pay. Again, but the Bengals don't pay their guys and don't do all this nonsense. Again, we've heard that over and over, that ridiculous comment. But Cordell Volson, the number 4th highest paid for that performance base. Again, what are your thoughts on that, guys? Cordell Volson, how he played this year. Do you guys think he earned that? And what do you think about the Bengals throwing out some performance money?
Yeah, I think that comes from the league, Jake. I don't think it comes from the Bengals. That's a pool that has players that are lower draft picks. It's a bonus for them, and he did earn it because he started every snap. He hasn't missed a snap since he's been drafted. He started every game for 2 years. And Volson, a lot of people on Twitter think he's the weak link, and I get it. He's had some rough moments, but he's also had some good moments. You just don't start every game 2 years in a row. And I don't think the Bengals are going to replace him. I think the coaching staff loves him, and I don't see anybody coming in. People say Dalton Risner and all this stuff. It's not going to happen. He's going to be our starting left guard. I hope he continues to improve. He did get better last year. I think there was a 4-game span. PFF had him rated as one of the top guards in football. He's got a lot of potential. And the Bengals obviously love him, and so does the NFL because they gave him $900,000 extra dollars.
Well, again, and again, obviously I understand the money comes from the NFL, but just the fact that the Bengals, again, are willing to distribute that money, I think it does say a little bit about this team that they are willing to do that, or put that in his contract. Maybe is that how that works, Mom?
No, it's a it's totally separate from the individual team. I think the NFL has this pool set aside for players that have outperformed their draft status, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
And, it's undrafted free agents, and it's like, hey, you guys are making NFL league minimum, but you started 8 games as an undrafted free agent, and they figure in this formula, you get $500,000 extra dollars. Other Bengals have gotten that through the years. But Volson being a later pick has exceeded expectations for that later pick, according to game starts. And I don't think it's really performance based. I think it's the amount of snaps you played, and he's got almost $1 million extra dollars.
Interesting. What are your thoughts, real quick, on Eric? We know you love Cordell Volson. What are your thoughts?
I think he's trending upwards. I think he had a much better year last year. I mean, there were obviously a couple plays, but everybody has a couple plays that they have issues. But if you compare last year to where we were in the first few weeks of the previous season, where he was on roller skates back there, and it was a welcome to NFL moment. I mean, he's come a long way. Of course, I'm going to root for my home state, North Dakota guy. I'm going to be his biggest fan until he's not a Bengal anymore. But I think he's putting in the work. I think one of the things that people undersell is the relationship that he has with Ted Karras. Ted has talked in some of the podcasts before how Cordell would follow him everywhere, and he just wanted to learn and learn and learn. And offensive line, yes, you can get bigger, you can get stronger, but every year, the more you learn the schemes, the more you're on the same page with your center and your quarterback, you can't coach that. And I think that's going to be a big aspect of his year 3 leap. I mean, the best case scenario here, he takes another step forward in year 3, and then we're talking about year 4, where this will be his last year because the Bengals don't pay guards, and somebody else will pay him a lot of money.
Yeah, and Vanguard makes a good point. That Preston against a guy like Sheldon Rankins going to help improve that as well. Tim and Ross both say they wish the mullet was true, the Burrow mullet. Did you guys see that on Twitter? No. The Burrow mullet. That thing was, I'm not going to lie, man, that thing was sweet. That was business on top, party in the back with a stash that went along with it. But yeah, agreed on Volson. I think he is trending upwards. And well, then kudos to the NFL for throwing out that money to these guys. Again, I thought that was connected with the Bengals, but that's interesting to hear that the NFL distributes that money as well.
It's a performance. It's a performance-based incentive. Something Eric said that's I think something we need to monitor. This is his third year. If Volson starts every game again, 3 years in a row starting at left guard, he's eligible for contract talk extensions. If the Bengals don't like paying guards, you know what? Offer him a nice contract after year 3. See if he takes it. Offer him a good, fair contract. See what happens. I would love to draft a player and him be there 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I would love that. And if he keeps on trending up, let's do it.
I agree. And I think too. I think too that when you look at Volson and you look at that position, it is hard to find guys that are that durable. And again, if he is trending upwards, I love the idea, Mon, of giving him maybe some kind of a contract extension. All right, guys, let's get to this. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hold on. I hadn't seen it yet. So for our fans that are on YouTube, I got to share it. And I didn't realize it was from the actual Bengals page.
There it is. There's the mullet. There's the mullet. Look at that thing.
Epic. That's very Tiger King.
I swear when I first saw that today, I fell for it. I'm not going to lie. I fell for it. I was like, that is legit. Like that, we're winning the damn Super Bowl if he rolls out with that haircut. I'm not going to lie.
That dude's going to a Van Halen concert in 1984, man.
Hey, that was a great album, by the way. 1984 is maybe one of the best albums of the 80s. All right, guys, let's get to this mock redo of the 2021 draft. We're going to rewind. And again, guys, remember, this is a team, the Bengals, that they come off a season where they lose Joe Burrow halfway through with that devastating knee injury. He doesn't finish the season. The Bengals kind of, they really kind of do what we would think they would do, and that is kind of fall apart without Joe Burrow. And it sets the Bengals up for a top 5 pick in the 2021 draft. So what we're going to do is we're going to look back at this 2021 draft because I think there's a lot of significance to this draft. And the one thing I keep looking at is this 2021 draft. It was like the draft the Bengals tried to fix the trenches, right? We have talked about all since this offseason started that the Bengals need to fix the trenches. In 2021, they tried to fix the trenches and they failed miserably at it. So I'm gonna go through real quick and just rewind and go through the draft picks. Here we go. 2021 draft. Obviously, Jamar Chase with the 5th pick overall might be the best player in the 2021 draft. I think some people would argue Micah Parsons, but I think if you lined up 10 out of 10 GMs and said, would you take Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons? I would think 10 of them would say, I'm taking Jamar Chase. So I'm going to say Jamar Chase is the best player of this entire draft. And it's interesting, right, guys, because the Bengals in the first round hit a home run. They get the best player in the draft at number 5. And after that, might have the worst draft of any team after the first round of that draft. And somehow, again, I think that goes to show you how great Joe Burrow is. For him to lead that 2021 team to the Super Bowl is something that is just insane to even think about, and something that Lamar Jackson will never accomplish. So let's talk about the picks real quick. Jamar Chase, the 5th overall pick. In the second round, the Bengals had the 36th pick. We're going to talk about this one. They move back and they take Jackson Carman, the offensive tackle from Clemson, with the 46th pick. We will come back and talk about that. In the third round, the Bengals go out and get Joseph Asai with the 69th pick overall. They try to fix the edge position, and again, strike out with that one. Then the Bengals have 3 fourth-round picks. And again, we're going to look at this fourth round because as you look at this fourth round and the players that went after the Bengals picked and before the Bengals picked, this fourth round wasn't really that good of a round, to be honest. But the Bengals had 3 picks in this round. The first one, they took Cam Sample, the edge from Tulane, a guy that has been versatile, has moved back and forth inside and outside on that defensive line. We'll come back and talk about Cam Sample in a minute. With the next pick, they take Tyler Shelvin, defensive tackle from LSU, with the 122nd pick in that draft. And then then their last pick in the fourth round, they take Deontay Smith, the offensive tackle from East Carolina, with the 139th pick. Again, we're going to talk about how the Bengals absolutely struck out in the fourth round of this draft. In the fifth round, the only other good pick the Bengals had in this draft was a kicker. And I don't know if you guys remember, but when the Bengals drafted Evan McPherson in the fifth round, they got so much hell for it. They caught so much hell for that, but ends up being one of the top 5 kickers in the NFL. So obviously a home run there in the fifth round. And really, if they would have taken him in the second round, looking back on it, it probably would have been almost as good. Trey Hill in the sixth round. Again, the Bengals trying to fix that center position with the 90th pick. They take Trey Hill, guard / center. Obviously, now he is the Bengals' backup center. Chris Evans, the other 6th round pick the Bengals had, the 202nd pick in the draft. Chris Evans, we will come back and talk about Chris Evans, the running back for Michigan. And then to finish off with the 235th pick, the Bengals take Wyatt Hubert, who didn't even play a snap for the Bengals, the defensive end from Kansas State. All right, so that is a rehash of this draft. And again, Mon, I want to start with you. The Bengals go out again, and this is lined up to one of your what if it would have worked out, been probably your favorite draft of all time because you love offensive tackles and defensive tackles. The Bengals take offensive tackle in the second, offensive tackle in the fourth, inside offensive lineman, guard, center in the sixth. Then they come back and they take defensive end in the fourth, defensive tackle in the fourth, and then they finish with a defensive end. The Bengals really trying to fix the trenches with the 2021 draft. But, did they strike out, Mon? I want to start with you. Tell me just your impressions of this draft. And is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Because honestly, Mon, I don't see one with the rest of these picks. What's your thoughts?
A lot of our fans in the chat are talking about the upcoming draft, the one in 3 weeks. And valid questions, some of the things they're asking in there, but what happened in 2021 is dictating what's going to happen in 2024.
There you go.
They really did miss on a lot of picks. Is there potential for a couple of them to still develop? Absolutely, there is. Can't argue about Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a no-brainer. If we were going back in time, they're going to pick Jamar Chase. You know, there was a lot of good players in that first round, but he fit the Bengals. He helped us get to a Super Bowl. He's about to sign a $30+ million contract with us. Jackson Carman, the Bengals had the original pick and they traded it with the Patriots. And I see a list of players that were picked. If the Bengals would have stayed put and not traded, there's a bunch of players that have started numerous snaps in the NFL. Offensive linemen. But Jake, this, there's always a debate. Do we pick need or do we pick BPA, best player available? If you want to go BPA, they should have picked Christian Barrymore, who the Patriots traded with the Bengals to get. But of course, the Bengals weren't going defensive line. They had just signed DJ Reader. They'd signed Trey Hendrickson. They spent a lot of money on the defensive line. Defensive tackle wasn't a position that they were thinking about, but he was BPA. And if I know we can armchair quarterback it now 3 years later. That would have been ideal to pick him. But there's a lot of players, a lot of offensive tackles that have played a lot of snaps. Tevin Jenkins of Chicago, he had a back injury from Texas Tech, and he's ended up, I think he started over 24 games. Landon Dickerson was picked before the Bengal pick, so he wouldn't have made it to the Bengals. You have Liam Eichenberg from the Dolphins. He started over 30 games. Walker Little, the tackle from Stanford that plays for the Jaguars, has started 17 games. Those are all more than Jackson Carman. So, there's a lot of good players. Asante Samuel was a cornerback from FSU, has 6 career interceptions. He's had a pretty decent career out in San Diego or Los Angeles, wherever the Chargers. There's a lot of quality players there, but you know what? The Bengals, they had a need. They had a need at the offensive line, and they rolled the dice with Jackson Carman. Let me say one thing about Carman. Let me stick up for him a little bit. Played left tackle at Clemson. I think he's played every spot on the Bengal offensive line except center. It's hard to set up to succeed. You're bouncing around, your head's spinning. I wish they would just say, hey, you're our left tackle, play left tackle. But the guy's bounced around, and it is what it is. It hasn't worked out. He's still on the roster. We'll see how it goes.
What about Creed Humphrey, who is sitting there
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
the way down? And again, in the Bengals defense, a lot of people obviously passed up on Creed Humphrey, but you could very well say that Creed Humphrey is one of the top 5 best players in this entire draft. And he's sitting there at 63. And obviously Creed Humphrey, not an offensive tackle, but again, like you said, I think what we need to discuss tonight too is the difference between best player available and reaching for a guy like Jackson Carman, right?
Right. And Jake, I have a long list of players in the second round that have been good, solid pros. You mentioned Creed Humphreys. We could talk about Pat Mahomes. We can talk about Kelsey. We should. They're Hall of Fame players, but they got the best interior offensive line in the NFL. 2 of those guys came from this draft, Creed Humphreys and Trey Smith. And they are dominant, and that's why Pacheco can run. That's why, we've seen it. We see the pundits, the experts talk about it. Mahomes is protected. He doesn't have anybody at his legs. The problems on that offensive line are the tackles. So, but he has a nice pocket, and he can sit back there and perform. It's that interior offensive line that's really stood out for Kansas City, and they did that in one draft. It's amazing.
Well, and I think too, Eric, hang on, because I want to bring up something you said, Eric, actually, is off air, Eric was talking about, again, I don't want this to become a Jackson Carman thing, but when you miss that badly in the second round, we have seen how devastating that can be. And again, usually the Bengals are very good in the second round. Usually they hit home runs in the second round with players. When you fail like the Bengals did with Jackson Carman, you could very well say Jackson Carman is a guy the Bengals probably could have gotten the 4th round, right? How much of a reach was Jackson Carman for this team, Eric?
Yeah, well, that was actually where I was going to go. It's kind of a two-part question, and I'm going to go to Mon for this first. So you just talk about how you want to take the best player available and not reach for a position of need. So I know we're in 2021 here, but this jumps out at me in our constant debate over Brock Bowers versus the best available offensive tackle at position. At where are you going to stand on that? At some point it's got to be best player available or best need available. And I think as long as we stick with the best player available and keep drafting those, even if you've got a starter in that position, if the best player available on the board is a left guard, even though we've got Cordell Volson, you take the left guard. Where do you sit on that, Mon? If the Brock Bowers is hands down the best player available, and that might be debated, but where you're still going to take a tackle?
That's a great question. I mean, if we're analyzing this 2021 draft, I mean, it's really easy to armchair quarterback it because right now I'm looking. The Bengals wanted offensive linemen, and they did pass on some BPA guys. We mentioned Barrymore, but Eric, there was 5 other offensive linemen that have started 30, 40 games and are good players. Samuel Cosme for the Commanders. I was going to say the Redskins. He's an up and coming. He's a great tackle. He could have been the pick. He was the 19th pick. He was picked 5 or 6 picks after Carmen. But if you want to fast forward to 2024, I mean, you can really never go wrong going BPA. You can't. I know we have this glaring need at right tackle. We got a 1-year Band-Aid right now. Maybe we could make that in a 2-year one. I don't know. But if Brock Bowers is there or that wide receiver from is it Brian Thomas from LSU?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I could see the Cincinnati Bengals pulling the trigger and doing it. But how many times have we seen the Bengals just pick a guy like, what the hell's going on here? Who is this guy?
Well, I mean, and that's to Jake's point. When we were, I can't remember all that details of it, but I know Jackson Carman could have been taken in the 3rd round, and that was the conversation of why the heck did we take him in the 2nd round? They didn't. Not only did they go and draft him in the 2nd round and get it completely wrong, they reached to draft him. It wasn't like he was the top lineman on the board. He was their top lineman, and they just completely got it wrong.
Well, I think too, guys, I think that's the debate for this upcoming draft, right? Is that's my biggest thing right now is, yes, I want an offensive tackle of the future. Yes, I want a defensive tackle of the future, but I also want somebody in the 1st round that's going to make an impact on this football team. And we didn't see that last year with Myles Murphy, right? I mean, that number 1 pick has got to be a guy that makes an immediate impact on this football team. And again, I think when you start going away from best player available, that's the situation that happens is you end up reaching. And, again, everybody on here is like, oh, Jake, you can't be worried because the Bengals don't draft offensive linemen. Well, you can't worry about that. This is now. Well, yeah, I can worry about it because it's facts. It's factual. You look at the Bengals drafting offensive linemen. They cannot develop these guys. We have 1 offensive lineman on this team that is starting that we drafted. Now, again, I know Jonah Williams was on there before, but we all know about Jonah. So, I mean, this team has struggled to draft offensive linemen and develop offensive linemen, and that's a real fear for me. And I think it's a legitimate fear because the Bengals have proven they don't develop these guys well.
But Jake, listen, I get it. You're absolutely right. The track record is bad, but paying 4 of our starting offensive linemen free agent contracts, it's not sustainable. We can't keep on doing that because what's going to happen? We're going to run out of money, and we will sign a free agent right guard or center that's a chump, because we have to eventually start hitting on these draft picks. Let me say a couple things here after the Carmen pick. Here's some guys we missed out on. Creed Humphreys, you mentioned, okay, numerous NFL starts. Nick Bolton, linebacker for Kansas City, all-pro player. Pat Freiermuth, we mentioned him, starting tight end for the Steelers. Dylan Radins started numerous games for Tennessee. Cosme, I mentioned, the tackle for the Commanders, 32 NFL starts. Aaron Banks, starting guard for the 49ers, 30 NFL starts. Walker Little, tackle for Jacksonville, 17 NFL starts. Liam Eichenberg, offensive lineman for the Dolphins, 38 NFL starts. Tevin Jenkins, 24 NFL starts. Barrymore, one of the best defensive tackles. Jackson Carman, 6 NFL starts for the Bengals. That hurts.
And not good ones. Good ones.
Yeah,
right?
That hurts. A lot of productive players in the 2nd round. 2nd round picks are staples of your roster. 2nd round picks are huge pillars for this roster, and we're not getting it. When you don't get something out of a 2nd round pick, you feel it. And we're feeling it now because in 3 weeks, we have to make up for it. Jake, why did the Bengals sign Trey Hendrickson? Why did they sign Mike Hilton? Why did they sign DJ Reader? Why did they sign, they tried to sign Train Waynes, he didn't work out. Cheeto
Yeah.
Awuzie. They signed these guys because their drafts were so bad the 3 years prior, their roster was bare. They had to go out and spend a lot of money to redo this roster. We can't have another 2021 in 2024.
And really, guys, and again, I think I want to move on into more of this draft, but I think that is really the question of this team is not just the development of these players, but actually going out and breaking these players down. The Bengals do not do a great job of that. They really don't. I mean, it's weird because wide receiver, forget about it. Home run, right? Quarterback, home run. Running back, home run. I mean, there's positions out there that the Bengals hit home run. I think you could even say linebacker is a home run Bengals staple position. But after that, it's dicey, guys. I mean, it's dicey. Defensive end, defensive tackle, safety, corner, tight end, especially tight end, offensive line. This team, I don't know if they're just not good at developing these guys, or they're not good at actually watching them and breaking down their film and understanding how they fit this roster.
Well, the earlier we draft an offensive lineman, defensive lineman, just whatever position, the earlier you draft them, it's a better talent and you have a better chance of success with that position. Jackson Carman is a second-round pick. He should be a star player in the NFL or a very good player. If you draft an offensive lineman in the 7th round, hey, it's a lottery ticket. Okay, but still, the NFL is full of quality players that were drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. All right, the Bengals need to master that too. Yes, wide receivers, other positions, we tend to succeed in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round. I'd like to see a little bit more with the offensive line and defensive line. Let's invent a time machine. Let's go back to the mid-'80s when 4 of the 5 Bengals offensive linemen were 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th round picks. That's when the draft was 12 rounds. The Bengals were unbelievable drafting late in those drafts, but it hasn't been that way recently.
Well, and Matt brings up a good point. CTB, yes, CTB was a great pick. Again, those second rounders, you hit on those second rounders, man, and you're in good shape, right? I mean, you hit those second rounders, you're in good shape. I think I don't listen, T Brookie. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just stating fact. And I think the fact is that these Bengals have got to hit a home run with this draft. They really do. I mean, if this is a draft like the 2021 draft where the Bengals are trying to fix these trenches, they have got to hit a home run with these picks because they have struggled to develop these guys. Again, the roster, yes, it is one of the best rosters in the NFL, T Brookie, but a lot of those guys are free agents. Now, if we're talking about the Bengals going out and being able to break down their film, yes, they are really good at finding free agents. There is no doubt about that. The Bengals hit home runs with their free agents. I'm talking about draft picks here. And I think this also goes back to Vanguard and what he said. Do the Bengals have enough scouts? I mean, again, that's a question that has been brought up for years. Do the Bengals do enough with their scouting department for these draft picks?
I think. Go ahead, Eric. Yes, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to talk about that. Yeah, it's not that we're going negative. We have a lot of conversations between the three of us off air about how close we were to winning that Super Bowl and how that draft not only set us up, for where we're at right now. So not that we want to go down a rabbit hole and get really negative and say how horrible the Bengals are at drafting. They're proven not to be these last 2 years, but the conversation is around how 1 year can really, really set you back. And so we don't want to go down a spiral and say they're horrible at drafting because they've proven to do really, really good. But Mon will kind of always circle the wagons and say, yes, it's going well. We've drafted well these last 2 years, but look at 2021. One draft can really set you back. And to the point with this draft, we were half a second from Jamar Chase being wide open, Joe Burrow seeing him, getting the game-winning touchdown. The way that this draft looks, we could have traded every single pick except for Jamar Chase, and Evan McPherson traded every pick and included a next year's pick, moved up and grabbed Penei Sewell as well, moved Jonah Williams.
Red scored.
We win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yes,
I want to just piggyback on that. Sorry, guys. Reds are over here. I'm a little mental. Eric, I mean, that's a good point. I put out a poll on Twitter earlier in the week about how many trench players do you think the Bengals will pick in this draft. I had 2, 3, 4, 5. Most of the people said 4 trench players. Quite a few said 5. Think about that. If some of these picks in 2021 would have panned out, I think the Bengals will pick 4 or 5 trench players coming up in 3 weeks. All right. But if some of these trench players would have worked out in 2021, it might be 2. And those other 3 picks that we're going to allocate because the 2021 draft was so poor could go to depth pieces, the wide receiver, tight end, some other spot. So when you have misses like that, a lot of your draft capital has to make up for it. A lot of your salary cap has to make up for it. And that's where we might miss a Jesse Bates. We might miss,
yes,
there's
that's
a
what I was going
blowback.
to say, Mark.
There's a blowback effect. There's a blowback.
There's a huge one, right? I mean, that's the point of this. And again, I know Brookie, sometimes you got to have it both ways, right? Because if you don't have it both ways, you lose guys like Jesse Bates. You lose guys like DJ Reader because you're having to go out and spend all this extra money on free agents to fix what you didn't do in the draft 2 years ago. And I think that is the point. Let's move on to the third round real quick. Joseph Asai, the edge rusher from Texas. And again, looking at the picks before and after, I mean, obviously the picks before, nothing, Kellen Mond and Davis Mills, 2 quarterbacks went before, really. But now we start looking at some other players here that, again, might fit this Bengals roster better. If you stop right there and you see Joseph Asai sitting there, again, Joseph Asai, we have been waiting for Joseph Asai to do something, right? We have just been sitting here waiting. This was going to be his breakout year. I think, Mon, you and I both said, this is going to be Joseph's year. We're going to see a whole new Joseph Asai. He's going to be motivated after what happened in the AFC Championship game. But it's never come about. And this guy barely got snaps last year. Talk about Joseph Asai, Mom.
Joseph Asai has flashed. I still have high hopes that something could, he could potentially blossom. Jake, I don't think they reported it, but he had a high ankle sprain or ankle injury the last preseason game. Just wasn't the same. I think they should have IR'd him. Instead, they stretched it out, and he just wasn't the explosive guy from the year before. Remember, the year before, he really turned it on the second half of the season. We saw what Joseph Asai could be. I salute the Bengals for going after him, because when this draft ended in 2021, the Ringer, ESPN, NFL.com, they raved about this Bengals draft. They raved about it. And that just shows you how, draft experts are, can be wrong at times. We really won't know about our draft picks until 2, 3, 4 years later. And, we already know a little bit about 2021 because we're devoting a show to it. But Joseph Asai could still turn into a solid player. There were some good players picked after him. Milton Williams, defensive lineman for the Eagles, on a very deep defensive line for Philadelphia, has flashed and played really well. Guards, there's Miners from Denver that started 39, almost 40 games. Cleveland's bounced around. Ben Cleveland, a guard, he was drafted by the Ravens. I think he's bounced around a couple teams. Nico Collins, wide receiver, again, BPA. Nico Collins is a stud for the Texans, absolute stud. He was picked after Osai. Of course, the Bengals aren't looking at wide receivers because we had the 3 stars. But sometimes if you see a great talent, do you just say, hey, we got to take them? I don't know. But I still think, call me crazy, I think Osai could be a special player for us. I don't want to say special. I think he could be a solid contributor this year.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
and one note on that. I mean, it's essentially a contract year. We really thought of going in. He was the preseason standout, and then he played one too many games and got hurt.
Yeah.
Now he's coming in, and everybody thought he was written off. I don't know if you've listened to any of some of the Bengals coaches' interviews. Lou Anarumo was praising Joseph Ossai and all work he's put in this offseason. So where we thought he was on the outs with the coaching, Lou's still talking about him like he's going to be out there and contribute. So contract year, guy that shows a lot of promise. Unfortunately, look, even if he balls out, we're going to get one more year out of him, and it needs to be a Super Bowl year.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's look at this 4th round because, again, the Bengals have
Reds are tied, by the way. Reds are tied. Just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. Keep me updated. All right. Let's look at this 4th round, Mom, because this 4th round, the Bengals have 3 picks in the 4th round. I mean, that is usually that 4th round is usually where you find, again, you talked about that with the 2nd round. With the 4th round, you're finding the backbone of your team, right? I mean, if you can hit a home run in the 4th round, you are in really good shape. The Bengals had 3 4th round picks in this draft and did not hit with any of them. Not one has hit. Cam Sample, you see him there. He was the first pick in the 4th round. Tyler Shelvin was the next pick in the 4th round. And then, of course, Deontay Smith was the 3rd pick in the 4th round. And again, Mon, I'm not trying to be negative here, but I'm looking at Amon St. Brown, and you're talking about best player available. Amon St. Brown is sitting there for the taking. He was actually the next pick after we took Cam Sample. Imagine this Bengals team with Amon St. Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. That is nasty.
It would be, Jake. But like I said, we're playing armchair quarterback here. And I want to disagree with you a little bit. Cam Sample has not been that bad. He's been a reserve. He backs up Sam Hubbard. He's given us some quality snaps. I think he's the best, one of the best, 3rd best draft pick in this draft.
That's not saying much, but
I would agree. Cam Sample's played a lot of snaps, and he's given us quality snaps. The one that kills us is Tyler Shelvin, and I'll tell you why. Tyler Shelvin, his best memory with the Cincinnati Bengals is the cover of the Cincinnati Enquirer where he's carrying Joe Burrow after the Arrowhead AFC Championship game. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. And, Tyler Shelvin was drafted to develop for 2 years to be the next DJ Reader. That's what their plan was. He was supposed to be that guy. He's not even in football right now. He's not even playing the UFL, I don't think. And that one really hurt. That hurt bad. 4th round picks, I get it. A 4th round pick. NFL rosters are littered with 4th round picks that play a lot. That hurts big time. Deontay Smith is still on the roster. I'll give the Bengals a little bit of leeway here.
He ate himself. T. says he ate himself out of football.
Yeah, but Deontay Smith, remember the Bengals coached, I believe, at the Senior Bowl that year. And Deontay Smith was one of the stars of the Senior Bowl. He was voted the best offensive lineman, very athletic. And a lot of teams wanted Deontay Smith. The Bengals jumped all over it. He's been injured, had an up and down career. Maybe he could be an Ossai. Maybe he could develop into a swing tackle. But at that time, pundits were raving the Deontay Smith pick. Just hasn't worked out. But Tyler Shelvin killed us.
Let me throw this out here. Guess who the first pick in that round was in the 4th round?
Who's that?
J2.
Yeah, that's right.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, who now resides in Cincinnati. This is what I want to talk about in this 4th round, right? Because the Bengals go down and they get Chris Evans. And I'm not going to sit here and bash Chris Evans because honestly, he has not really gotten the opportunity, I would say. But there were a couple running backs, Mon, in the 4th round that, again, and I'm just playing armchair quarterback here, but one of them's name is Ramondre Stevenson, who is the starting running back for the New England Patriots. He was sitting there right before Tyler Shelvin was picked. So again, I think when you look at this draft, the Bengals, we're going to say they struck out with Chris Evans because we don't know. Chris Evans hasn't done anything, and we haven't seen Chris Evans do anything. Maybe it's because he hasn't gotten enough opportunity or not. But we know Ramondre Stevenson is a dude. Again, I just think it goes to show you how close you can be in these drafts and how important it is that you hit home runs with these drafts. Because you look at Chris Evans, who was taken in the 6th round of this draft, Ramondre Stevenson sitting there in the 4th round. Mon, tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Stevenson turned out to have a pretty good career. He had some fumble issues. Chris Evans has always been the preseason darling. Everybody's like, hey, it's going to be his time. He's like a wide receiver, great hands. He's been in the doghouse for a couple years. I don't know what's going on there. Talent-wise, you could make an argument he's one of the most talented running backs in that running back room. It just hasn't worked out. I don't know what's going on. He had issues in college. He got in the doghouse there. It's followed him to the pros. But, like I said, we could armchair quarterback this all day. But I had high hopes for him. I thought he was going to be the steal of the draft.
Well, let's look at the 5th round because obviously our guy Money Mac was taken early in the 5th round, earlier than most kickers are taken. And the Bengals obviously have not had what you would consider a lot of luck at that position in recent history. But the Bengals hit a home run with Evan McPherson. And just looking at this 5th round, again, since we have been picking on them for their picks, this pick was an absolute steal, was it not?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember the kicker, forgot his name, that's with the Eagles now that the Bengals cut. They drafted. Elliott? Yeah, Jake Elliott. Yeah, yes, Elliott. He signed a big contract, and I was shaking my head because they kept Randy Bullock, and it didn't work out. It was a bad look for the Bengals that they cut him, but. They hit the home run with McPherson, and McPherson will end up signing a pretty good contract for a kicker. That I wouldn't be surprised if that happens this year. It could happen.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I think we'll see it happen this year. What about your thoughts on that? Because Eric, I know you're a huge Money Mac fan. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously, hindsight's 2020. I mean, I didn't know much about him when we drafted him. Obviously, us Florida State fans don't love when we draft people out of Gainesville, but Justin raved about him, and we took his advice and said this will be the one Gator that we'll cheer for, and there's no looking back. That's all we wanted. It was not to have that same duplicate what happened with Jake Elliott, and they did. I believe there was a kicking competition when McPherson came in, wasn't there? But he won it hands down.
Yeah, he did. He won it hands down. I forgot who the other kicker was.
I want to feel like it wasn't Bullock again.
I think
it was Bullock. It was Bullock.
Yeah, I think it was.
It was Bullock. It was Bullock.
So I mean that.
And
something's finally worked out.
I'm sorry, guys. I had to mute one of our guys. He's taken over the chat. I just deleted him for the night. So I'm sorry.
I wonder who that was. I wonder who that was, Mon.
Hey, but we got a better version of him out here.
And we do have a better version. I like that, Aaron. I like that, Aaron Butler. Let's Andrew brings up a good point here. And I think we need to talk about it before we go because I think it rings true. Who is making the final call on these picks? I mean, right now, it feels like Coach Taylor has a little bit more pull maybe than Marvin did, which is kind of crazy to think that, but I think that might be true. But who is making the final call on these Bengals picks? Is it Duke Tobin? I don't think it's Mike Brown anymore. I don't think Mike Brown has a say. Is it the Blackburns? Is it Taylor? Is it a mixture of all? Mom, what are your thoughts on this? I think this is a really good point by Andrew.
I think it's a committee process. I think a lot of people get up and talk when their 15-minute window is up. They probably start talking 2 picks before. we're going to have 4 or 5 players available that we like graded this way. Let's have a debate. The coaches with the Bengals, we all know this. They have a lot of say-so in the draft process. Not as much as under Marvin, because I think Coach Taylor wanted his guys to have a voice, but not as much. He wanted him to focus on player development and getting ready for getting that playbook ready for the upcoming season. But they still have a lot of say-so, and I think that's a good thing. But Jake, I can think it'd be a bad thing also. Let's say they're pounding a table for a player. I want this guy, and he gets him. The guy struggles for a couple years. Maybe that coach is feeling the heat, like, hey man, I really I stepped out of my, and stuck up for this guy, and it's not working out.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy's like, hey, let's give him another shot. And maybe that could be a blowback effect that, hey man, this guy needs to be replaced. It's not working out. I don't know. I like the process that the coaches get a say-so, but at the same time, I think it can have a negative effect. But I will say this: I think it's a committee process. I think they decide majority wins.
I do too.
Five players want Jackson. 5 guys want Jackson Carman. 3 don't. Jackson Carman's the guy.
I think, and I agree. I think that's 100% true. I do think Duke Tobin, and I know I'm going to sound crazy here. I think Duke Tobin might have, if it's close, I think Duke Tobin might have the final say. What are your thoughts on that? If it's close, does Duke have the final say? I think he might.
He could. I don't know. I mean, I remember hearing stories years ago that Mike Brown wanted Drew Brees really bad. He was like adamant. He wanted to draft Drew Brees. He was overridden by this committee, and they didn't pick Drew Brees. And they talked about that for years. I remember Hobson writing articles about that.
I remember.
So,
that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Eric, what do you think? Do you think Tobin has more pull than the others?
I don't know. I from everything that you listen to when they talk, I feel like they're like us. We have this relationship where we know, I know what Mon likes, I know what Jake likes. I mean, I feel like they're a really close-knit group. I think that's one thing that the Bengals have that a lot of organizations don't have, is they're almost like a family. They might fight like brothers once in a while, but I think they really know what each other wants. I do think at the end of the day, if there's a tiebreaker, it's probably going to go to Duke. I don't know if Mike's in the room anymore. I think he's kind of handed off a lot of that. I think he deals more with the keeping players and whatnot. But I don't know. I think he might have 51% to the coach's 49%. But I think it's working. It's proven to work these last 2 years.
I agree. I do. Like I said, I do think Duke probably has the final say. And I want to close this show, guys, with our thoughts on doing this show. And I think it's the fact that the Bengals have got to just crush this draft. They have 10 picks, right? They have 3 picks the second day, 2 third-round picks, which are very high quality picks where the Bengals could use to move here and there. They have a 4th, a 5th, 2 6s, 2 7s. They can move up and down this board. I did a mock just off air with you guys with trades, and I moved us up to the 12th pick. Yes, I gave up a 1st and a 2nd next year, but I'm trying to get a ring. And I think the Bengals have got to – I think they have to go into this draft with that thought process of, we have got to go out and get guys right now that are going to be impact players, not just for the future, but right now are going to help this football team win. And we're talking about the Bengals structuring this trench on both sides of the ball to where there's actual depth there. If they're going to do that, guys, the 2021 draft shows you that if you don't hit with those picks, it can set your team back. And I think that's the point, right?
Yeah, if anybody wants to know why we're doing a 2021 redo or discussion, the 2021 draft is what happened then is what in 2024 is basically a redo of the 2021 draft, because What they're doing in 2024 is going to fix the mishaps of 2021.
Yeah.
The trenches, I'm pounding a table for the trenches. Okay, I wish I was one of the coaches that had to say so. 4 defensive linemen, 3 of them are free agent acquisitions that are starters. Okay, or BJ Hill was a trade acquisition. 5 offensive linemen, 4 of them were free agent acquisitions. That's the most expensive way to build a roster, the most expensive way, and it's not the most efficient way. They have got to hit the draft picks. They got to get the trench players. There's going to be 4 or 5 drafted offense and defensive linemen in this 2024 draft. We got to get long-term starters on each side of the ball. We got to. I'd love to see a center, a right tackle. I will say this. I've been doing some mocks, been doing a lot of reading. One of the mocks on ESPN, prominent, I forget who it was, sorry, he has 6 offensive linemen go in the first 15 picks. 6. If the Bengals want a right tackle, I think they're going to have to move up. Because Mims from Georgia only has 8 starts. He's going to be a work in process. He's a huge guy that's athletic, but he's still a work in progress. He's only started 8 games in college. Do we want to take a risk and draft him? I don't know. We'll see what happens. They could trade up, they could trade back, accumulate more picks. Do they need more picks? I mean, why not? I guess, but they have got to hit it out of the park.
And I think that's what worries me is when the Bengals have to fix the trenches. I look back at 2015 too, and Iron Man just said it. No more developmental guys, right? No more Cedric Abuehis. You can't do that. You cannot do that. That's not how you fix the trenches. Is taking developmental guys like Cedric Abuehi, who is athletic but does not have the put together to be successful in the NFL. And again, these drafts, guys, you're not going to hit on every pick. But in 2021, the Bengals only hitting on 2 picks out of that many. That hurt. Go ahead, Eric. What were you going to say? Finish this up.
Well, so we came into this show and we've been talking about this for years, and I don't know that we've ever really looked at the deep dive. We came into this show thinking, okay, let's look at the picks that we had. Let's see who is there. There's ways to fix this. And we get into the 3rd and 4th round, and we're struggling to see guys that just jump off the board that the Bengals would actually pick. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, if you knew what you knew now, then you would take him. But nobody wanted another wide receiver for them outside of Jake. I know Jake wants only wide receivers, but
we're good at it.
Nobody was going to expect them to take another wide receiver. So we look at this and we see, well, maybe there wasn't really anybody that jumps off the board in the 3rd and 4th round. But what I think we've answered it here, and what it all comes down is sometimes the best deals that you can have plan out for you are the ones that you don't make. And if we don't make this trade down with the Patriots, we have Barrymore, or we have those offensive linemen there, and we don't have Tyler Shelvin, and we probably don't have Asai there, but we don't make that deal, and we have an impact player instead of 3 players that haven't done anything to date. So I leave everybody with, sometimes we all pound the table for a trade up, a trade down, but sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't make.
Let's be real quick. I know we're having fun with this, but if they drafted St. Brown or another wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round, they would have been destroyed. Yeah. They would have been absolutely destroyed. We got to give the Bengals credit. Their picks were wise, the positions at least that they were targeting. It just didn't pan out. Right. I think every position that they drafted, hey, smart moves. They were looking ahead. They realized they got to reinforce. They got a lot of money of free agents. They had just spent a lot of money, $50 million for Reeder, $40 million or $50 million for Hendrickson. They were spending a lot of money on the trenches. They're going to have to replace these guys in 3 years. Let's draft these guys and they'll step right in 3 years. Hasn't worked out, but I salute them for trying. And we can't give up, Jake. We can't give up. We got to keep going.
I don't salute them for trying in 2015. Now Iron Man has got me thinking about how crappy that draft was. Although we can't even go back to that one because the 2015 draft is probably the worst in Bengals history. And I don't even want to look at that disgusting draft. All right, guys. Wait, real quick, Mom. What's the give me the Reds update?
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Matt said, please remove Jack.
We apologize.
Matt, that is great, Matt. That is a great way to finish the show. I love that. Please remove Jack.
Aaron, I love you, Aaron. Don't be mad at me, Aaron, okay? This is a Bengal pod. You're my favorite Raven fan. You're just – I was distracted by your comments. I'll put you in timeout, okay? It's all good.
We get a Bengals Pulse shirt. We got to send it to Aaron.
Hey, real quick before we get out of here, Mon, give me the update. Are Reds winning? I'm about to go.
2-2. 2-2. They're not winning. It's tied, but it should be 3-2 because Jonathan India can't slide it.
I know.
Man.
He had a heck of a bat yesterday, though. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We would very much appreciate that. As always, follow Mon on Twitter @TheFireMon. Follow me on Twitter @CoachJakeOwens9. Follow Eric on Twitter @eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Cincinnati Pod on Twitter @WinCincinnatiPod. And as always, follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter @Bengals_Pulse9. The same on Instagram without the @Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, guys, make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. Guys, the next time we are on air, it's going to be 3 weeks before the draft. Crazy. We got more mock drafts coming. Yes, Mon.
We're going to do another mock next week. Should we tell them about our guests coming up, or should we hold off on that?
Let's hold off on that. That's a good surprise.
Gotcha.
Let's hold off on that.
Okay.
But yes,
we got some good guests lined up.
We got some good guests lined up. Another mock coming very soon as myself just knocks it out of the park. I should have put up the one that I did off air because that one, the trade up, Bowers at 12, give me a break. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. He is Mon. He is Eric. I am Jake. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will see you next week.